Today, I am playing Minecraft, but I'm a chicken, which means I have all the traits of a chicken. I have to eat seeds alongside with binding fatigue, and I also lay eggs. And I'm doing all of this with 4 hearts. And my only goal for today is to beat the game. So, first things first, I started with getting wood. And I quickly learned the side effects of laying an egg.
Am I giving birth? Oh my god. What the fuck? Oh, push!
And then I just went back to eating wood, after that. Made a crafting table, a pickaxe, got some stone, alongside with some coal, tools, all the stuff I would need. Found some iron, but unfortunately, me and my small chicken brain didn't detect the creeper, and so I did die. Then I felt like it'd be smart if I got some seeds, because that is what I can eat, along with some, vegetables. I've never really been one for vegetables anyways, so anyway, I grabbed my crafting table, went down, got some stone for a furnace, that way I could smelt my iron. And then I decided to venture off a little bit in the cave, came across a zombie and some iron, so, I thought me and the zombie were cool, but I guess we weren't, because, So, once I finally got that zombie killed, I just continued getting the iron. And so finally, after a while of, mining and getting some ores, I finally started to venture off, see what was out there a little bit. And I'm pretty scared of the dark, so I decided to kill some sheep and make a bed. And so eventually I did find a village, and because I was feeling fairly greedy, I decided to raid all their farms. And I took their food and their beds, and more farms, and more beds too. I did eventually find this cave, but I figured it wasn't all that worth it. And after venturing on for a little bit, I did finally decide to stop and smelt all my iron, that way I could actually have armor. And I decided to get rid of my eggs, and I didn't quite realize the commitment I had made, because I have children now. And then after a while, I finally had an entire set of armor, a shield, and a sword. And eventually I did find a lava pool. I'm not too familiar with how to make a portal with the lava pool. I mean, I know how to, but I don't know how to. But, I figured I had enough room for, mistakes. And what better time would it be to lay an egg than right now? And so eventually I did finish the, portal frame, but I realized I had no flint and steel, so I put some wood around it in hopes that it would light, some lava, but unfortunately that did not in fact work. And instead the lava just burned right through the wood, so I ended up going on a little adventure for some gravel. It took a second to actually find some flint and steel, but eventually I did, which thank God. And so I made some flint and steel, I lit the portal and I went in it, and the spawn wasn't too bad. And shortly after, I did find a bastion. I started looking around and, trying to be as stealthy as possible. I quickly fluttered down to this chest, and it just had some iron and, some kind of useful stuff in it. So then I made an iron pickaxe to get this here gold block, and unfortunately, it did not go that well because these piglins started chasing me, rightfully so. And so after scrapping with those piglin, I finally decided to get some gold ingots and actually, make some gold armor to, protect myself a little bit. So, after I did all that, I decided to scout out the place a little bit. I didn't exactly know what I was looking for, but I was looking for some. And, I'd got more gold, made more ingots, and I was quite unaware of what was waiting for me behind this here wall, because in a split second, they just started charging at me, and, they killed me, but, they are no match for me because I got smarter. I learned from my mistakes. I was in quite the predicament, but, I used my head, I dodged, I hit, I dodged, and I hit, and I dodged again, but then this guy moved over and I couldn't hit him anymore, and so now I was just dodging until eventually he just ran off the blocks. Then my only opponent was this lucky fella over here, and in the end I ended up killing them. And once I finally got to the chest, I looted them, and there wasn't much stuff in there, but it was good. And then while I was trying to trade with this one singular piglin, I found a whole nother bastion waiting for me. So, I fluttered over to that, and, I had to whoop the skeleton's ass really quick. Boom! And of course I had to give birth too, But despite what I was going through, I still killed that skeleton. And I got a gold block, and in forgiveness, I gave the piglin half my gold, but I guess it wasn't enough for them because, I was trying to patch the holes, give them the glory treatment, and they still killed me. And, I guess they didn't like me taking their gold from their chest either, because someone's chasing me all around, we're going in circles, it's scary out here, man. And I did end up finding another chest, which had some pretty decent stuff in it, and then I finally found a pretty decent spot to trade all my gold for ender pearls. And so I finally gave them all I had, and it still wasn't good enough for them. But fear not, because they finally started giving me what I needed. And eventually, after that, I finally found the fortress, and, that didn't pan out very well either, I had to lay an egg in the middle of all of this, and I was just, getting shot with fire, and there was nothing I could do because I was blinded. So, you know, I died. But that would not keep me down. Eventually, you know, I finally found the blaze spawner, unfortunately. And so, you know, I just started attacking, like, bam, bam, throwing punches, you know, hitting, running, you know, dying, you know, boom, boom, boom. And then I died again, and then boom, 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 boom. And then they were around every goddamn corner I turned. And, you know, this looks like a pretty bad situation, and it is, because I am outnumbered. There are more of them than I have hearts. And I feel like if I, you know, used my shield every once in a while, it would definitely help me out a lot more. But who needs a shield? You know, I am strong. I am, you know, relentless. And despite my attempt to hide behind this wall and then getting killed, you know, that I don't give up. You know, I try, and, you know, I keep hitting them like boom, you know, getting them in a chokehold. Slowly but surely getting these, you know, blaze rods, you know, bam, bam, killing them, you know, and just charging right into the center of all of them, you know, hitting, swinging, you know, punching. Nothing was working, you know, so I retreat, and, you know, they continue coming at me, and, you know, like, you know, I died again, but that doesn't stop me. I get back up, you know, boom, you know, died again, boom, you know, boom, you know, but of course, what better time to lay an egg than right now? And so eventually I just started throwing my children at the blazes, because, you know, if close range won't work, might as well use projectiles. But then I ran right back in, and I died again. But to my sheer luck, I finally had enough blaze that I needed. And so I was finally able to start my journey to the end. Accidentally through 3, but that's besides the point. And during my journey in the desert, I did end up finding a broken portal. I didn't find anything too good in the chest, and then I also found a shipwreck. Didn't find anything at all there. So eventually I did find the location of the stronghold, so I started digging down and mined right into it. And then I did find some chests, you know, I didn't find anything too good, but I did find some diamonds though. I also fairly easily found the portal as well, which was a win. But I quickly learned that I needed one more, so I went on the search for another pearl, and, you know, I came across some unfriendly beings, some unique looking creatures, but they were no match for me, because if I died now, there was no going back. It was done, because I would have spawned not here. And everything was going okay until these silverfish started coming at me. I have quite the track record with silverfish, so, you know, I hate them. But eventually I found some other mobs to harass, you know, just bam. And after all that, I finally found the pearl that I needed. You know, I had to come across a creeper on my way back to the portal. You know, some silverfish as well. These goddamn silverfish. And once I did finally make it back to the portal, I had a zombie, you know, waiting for me. So I quickly took that out. And then I decided to make a diamond sword as well, because I feel like that would have been kind of important. And so following that, I tried making a bow. I couldn't quite figure it out, but eventually I did figure it out. But anyway, after that, I finally lit the portal at a lightning quick speed, of course. So once I reached the end, I could smell the victory in the air. I immediately started making my way up one of those towers, and while I was trying to squeeze out an egg, the purple stuff started getting me. So I jumped. I'm not entirely sure what I was trying to do here, but I did die. So I finally got the first one, and then I went for the second, and I was trying to be cool, you know, shoot one, shoot the other. But I missed the first one and the second one. And then I finally got the first one again. And the dragon was shooting its fire at me, so I quickly turned around and shot more, you know, bam! And I missed, of course. I missed again. And again. But, you know, 4th time's the charm, because I got it. And then I shot the other one, and I got it too. But the more arrows I shot, the more fire got thrown at me. So I physically built up as slow as possible. And I just started firing my arrows at, you know, the stars, at the dragon. Boom! I missed all of them, of course. But that doesn't matter, because I finally started getting them. And another not soon after. And eventually I did get smarter, and I did get a little closer to all the others. Bam! Boom! And then I eventually started shooting at the dragon, and I got this cool hit, like, mid-air. And I think it is safe to say that I am not the smartest individual, because I did fail at this, you know, bed, you know, strategy multiple times. I just couldn't get close to it, and I didn't know exactly how it went, which led to the dragon absolutely obliterating me. But when I got back, I was just shooting. Bam! Boom! Boom! And my bed did break, but, you know, not all heroes wear capes, man. Some wear feathers because of what I did next, you know. Self-sacrifice, man. And so I did it again. But luckily for me, I did not die this time. You know, I perched on this, you know, pillar, and I started shooting at the dragon, getting pretty good damage, and then eventually I decided to, you know, shoot more and then flutter back down. That way, you know, me and this dragon could, you know, like finish this fucking fight. You know, I got another bed, killed myself again. And then I used my secret weapon, you know, throwing my eggs. It didn't work. But then, you know, at last, I just started shooting at it. It finally perched. You know, I ran up. I got the final hits. And I finally killed the dragon.